So, Dr. Asif, I request you to start. Today is yours is the last session of this refresher course.
Oh, wow.
Then only presentations are. So
Oh.
it was started by the Professor Arumugam, and today you are concluding in some sense.
Oh, nice.
So I request you to
So people must be happy now.
start the session.
No more lectures.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes, they feel relieved little bit.
Yeah.
Once this lecture is over, because
Yeah.
after 14 days, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I can understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you once again for the opportunity. And let me start the lecture now. So I'm planning to do what I did in my PhD thesis. So some of the important results from my thesis I'm going to showcase today. So the diagram which is there on the title slide is that is a Schreier graph, a third level Schreier graph. So action of Gupta-Fibry-Kowalski group on ternary rooted tree, level 3 action. So if you follow that level 3 action, one can generate this kind of this graph or graph isomorphic with this one, which I have drawn. There is again a kind of coloring. So the faint blue edges is the action of one generator, and the dark blue edges is the action of another generator. I wanted to show actually how the infinite level looks like, but if I have, I will show you. No, I don't have. Okay, thank you. Yesterday, somebody asked me questions on Automata, and yesterday, after my lecture, I took feedback from some of the participants. So what feedback I got that if I get opportunity, I should speak on what is Automata. Explicitly, I should I should try to explain how the automatas and how the permutations are involved. So I'll take this opportunity and I'll start with the definition of deterministic finite automata, which is called as DFA in short. So you find this in any automata theory book or a formal language theory book. So it is actually a phi tuple, and for a graph theory background, people can consider it as a directed label graph, where one so that if you are considering trying to visualize the DFA, and if you are considering a finite directed label graph, then your vertex set is set S, which in automata theory we call states. The set X is the labels of the graph. So here we are calling it as alphabet. T is the so instead of writing down ages, so or age set E, in automata theory, people use the transition function or input function T, and S naught. So from whatever sets or vertices we have of the directed label graph, consider one specific vertex, and we will call it as the initial state, and another subset of states, which I'm denoting at F. So F is subset of S, and that set I'm going to call as a finite states, set of finite states. And so the important thing is how the edges are explicitly written in this kind of presentation. So so you have the domain of the transition map T is S cross X. So set of vertices, its product with set of labels or alphabet, and you are ending with S. So you suppose you have a directed edge which is starting from S and ending at S prime, where S and S prime are your states, and that directed edge has a label X. Then we write down it as the initial point of the edge, starting point, and its order pair with the label, and wherever it is ending is value of the function. Yeah. Generally in automata, people use incoming arrow. So with the state where there is an incoming arrow is a initial state, and when we have two circles around the state, it means that state is a final state. Final state. So just to just to understand, I'm trying to give you an example where I have two states, and both the states one can easily make out from the notation are final state. S0 is the initial state, and S0 has two edges. One of them is a loop, which is labeled by 0, and another edge, which is outgoing edge ending at S and has label 1. S is another state which has only one outgoing edge, which is labeled by 0. And so since 3 edges, so I have 3 means I have defined T where 3 values are given, and 4th means S doesn't have edge or loop which is labeled by 1. So I can say that that particular value of T is not defined. So this particular diagram is actually, if you remove that initial and final state, and if you allow all states to be final and all states to be initial, then it is then whatever language it generates is actually a golden mean or a Fibonacci shift. The word Fibonacci is related to, if you consider, if you say, for example, if you start with S0, that is your initial state, and your final states are both S0 and S, and now you start collecting all kind of words this diagram is generating. So you can see, if you see the one length word, this diagram is generating is 0, and one length, another one length word is 1. Then if you say 2 length words, then there are 3 2 lengths possible words which this diagram can generate. And if you consider if you follow the sequence of the length, then you will see that is actually a Fibonacci sequence. So Fibonacci word is also associated to the shift. Now I will come to the automaton which I am interested, which we need for groups, for our groups. So here I'm not interested in my final set of final sets or a initial state. Instead, I want a output map. So I'm denoting it by O. So transition map or input map is the way it was defined in the DFA, and now as an output map, you can see the codomain of the function or the range set. It is X, it is not the state S. So T and O are different. If you see the codomain part, they have same domain, but the codomains are different. One map giving you state, and other map is giving you label. So you have your one state, you have a state S, and you are following the edge labeled by X, and what letter you are getting as output. And whatever is that letter, if this map is a permutation map, then means in our group case, we are interested in when this map is permutation map. And then that automata can be means that particular state can give you a automorphism on a corresponding regular rooted tree. So that is the idea. So how, when I'm saying permutation means what? I have S, and you look at the all possible outgoing arrows in the diagram. Outgoing arrows at that vertex S or state S, and then read the labels. So one edge must be, the input label is X1, another edge will have different from X1, and so on. So possibly you will be having mod X edges, and each edge is labeled by, as an input symbol, is labeled by one of the letters from your alphabet. And then as an output map, so I'm considering my output map as a permutation sigma. If sigma is, if I want to denote it, then the output will be image under that sigma, image under that permutation of the input symbol. And that's how I'm looking at it. So whenever I'm talking about group generated by automata, then along edges, I have this. I have the permutations, and these permutations are important for me. They play an important role in my PhD thesis, my work. I'm going to call them as a root permutation. When I'm considering this automata generating a group, then these permutations I'm calling as a root permutation. Professor Bhate asked me one question, and yesterday I could not give the proof, but proof is actually easy. So one can, so we want to prove that composition of two automorphism, their restriction at some letter or at some vertex is nothing but the way it is given in the right hand side, which sometimes looks not that easy, but it is not that difficult. It is easy actually. So if you want to understand that, so we can take the composition action at the word which is starting with specific letter X. So I have a word which is X and the suffix is W. And now I'm looking at the action of the composition of two maps. So I will act G2 first. Here again, if your action, you're taking left action, right action, then the confusion will be there. So I'm taking G2, will act on my XW word, and then I will take care of G1. So I'll keep G1 aside. I'm taking a square bracket, and inside that square bracket, I'm acting G2. And I know the rule. G2 will first act at X, and then restriction of G2 at X, that another map, which is another map, that map will act on the suffix. So let us call that G2 at X as Y, and G2 restriction at X of W, let us call it as, so it will give me some word, let us call that word as W prime. And G2 at X will give me another letter, let us call that letter as Y. So inside square bracket, I will be having a word which will begin with Y. So YW prime. And now I'm acting my G1 on that. So similarly, I can write down G1 at Y, and then G1 restriction at Y will act at W prime. And now I will replace my Y and W prime. And then one can easily make out the equality holds. Now I will come to the what I promised. So I want to first introduce the notion called replacement graph, and then I will try to take an idea from this graph, and I will introduce a notion which we introduced in my thesis called generalized replacement, which is a kind of generalization of this particular definition. And this definition is using this definition, Wigderson and Vadan and Ringgold, they constructed a zigzag products. So they started with this definition. So what is replacement product of graph? We have so whenever we are in replacement product or zigzag product, we are always interested in, means the graphs which we will be using are regular graphs, they are connected graphs, and along the edges you have some colors, and that colors we will be using from a specific set, which is say D, means whatever is the regularity, we will be taking that size set as our label set or color set. And whenever you have edge in your graph which is connecting U to V, then we will be assigning some color. So near U we will assign one color, and near V we will assign some color. And then if I have that kind of coloring, I'm going to call it as a bi-label graph. Yeah, and when I'm able to assign such bi-label graph, then I can write down algebraically as in terms of a map, and that map we call as a rotation map. So what is that rotation map? The domain of rotation map is your vertex set of your graph into your color set. So product of that, and the domain and codomain are both same. And how it is defined at U, H, where U is your vertex of a graph and H is the color. And the resultant is the endpoint of the edge and the color near that particular vertex. So you can see in the diagram, the edge, it has two ends. One end is U, other end is V. Near U, the color is H, and near V, the color is K. This H and K may be same, may be different. So rotation map is explicitly telling me how the labeling is.
Or here U and V are connected, is it?
Yeah, U and V are connected. So the first diagram is the way we know graph.
In the rotation map, U, H goes to V, K. So U and V should be connected.
Yeah, U and V should be connected. Then only this definition makes sense. Yeah. So I escaped that just to give in terms of diagram. Thank you. So I'm assuming that U and V are connected. Then I'm assigning a color, and then once I have color, then I can write down the rotation map. So if we are done with this terminology, then we can think about the definition. So I have two graphs. I'm calling it as G1 and G2. G1 is D1 regular graph. G2 is D2 regular. Both are connected graphs. Both are bi-labeled graphs. A vertex set of G1, I'm denoting by V1, edge set E1, and vertex and edge set of G2, I'm denoting by V2 and E2. And the regularity is D1 and D2. And in order to you must have seen this in definition of zigzag product also. In order to construct a replacement product, I need one more extra condition, and that is vertex set of the second graph should be same of the regularity of the first graph. So I'm my first graph mean G1 and my second graph mean G2. So vertex set of G2, which is V2, size of that V2, number of vertices in the second graph should be same as regularity of the first graph. This condition we need in zigzag product also. So this is a crucial. This is crucial condition. Yeah. And if you have these two graphs which satisfies this condition, then we can construct their replacement product. So replacement product is G1, that circle around R, that is the notation for replacement product. You can find out in literature, and the G2. So G1 R circled R, G2 is denoted for the replacement product of G1 and G2. This graph will always be D2 plus 1 regular graph. Now D2 is regularity of the second graph, G2 graph. So resultant graph will always be regularity of the second graph plus 1. That so D2 plus 1 regular graph will be. And the vertex set is as usual the product of V1 with V2. And we know that because of that condition, V2 we can write down as a square bracket. Means you can identify as a I'm using that notation D1, where means by D1 I mean the square bracket D1, I mean 1 to D1 numbers. And the edges are described by, so I'm not describing edges as an edge set. So instead of that, we are using our rotation map because we are started with a labeled bi-labeled graph. So VK, now what is happening is, since we have that condition, V2 is the cardinality of V2 is D1. So colors of the first graph can be associated to labels of the vertex, means they are my vertices in the second graph. And therefore, I have my vertex of the resultant graph will be V comma K, where V is the vertex of the first graph and K is the vertex of the second graph. And now I want to color it, say that color is I. So how this edge means what will be the endpoint and what will be the color at near the endpoint that I wish to find. And here the word replacement why we used will come into picture. So one can see in the order pair, V is fixed. So I'm taking V as it is. And now I'm taking M as a second ordinate in my pair. And my color is J. Now what is, how that M and J came? What is the relationship of that M and J with K and I? So this Ki, so I'm going in G2 graph, second graph, and I'm looking at a K vertex with I color H, and I'm looking at its endpoint. So its endpoint is M with color J, and I'm taking that. And so what I mean here is actually I'm taking a copy of a second graph, and I'm replacing a vertex, which I'm denoting as a V. I'm replacing a vertex of a first graph by a copy of the second graph. And that's why we call it as a replacement product. So you have a G1 graph where every vertex is replaced by the second graph. And then in the original G1 graph, how the adjacency, that adjacency we want here to be preserved so that the resultant will always be connected. And that is done with the help of that another rotation map. And that's why the resultant graph will have degree 1 more than the degree of the regularity of the second graph. So so the second rotation map is actually edge of the those two vertex, means edge in the first graph. So I'll explain you this with the help of example. So I have these two graphs, and so in the first graph I have 4 vertices, and degree of each vertex is 3. So here I have 3 vertex graph, which I consider as a triangle, so it's a 3 cycle, and then I use some labeling. So one can have XX label also, both the end same label. I'm just trying to avoid it. but we can do that, and depends on your coloring, your resultant graph will look. So coloring will play a role. So with respect to these two coloring which I have used, what is the so U will be replaced by copy of a triangle. V, W, and Z are also be replaced by copy of a triangle. And whatever here, if you see, say for example, your this edge between U and V, it has a color. Near U, its color is 1, and near V, its color is 3. So this rotation map G1, U comma 1 has its image will be V comma 3. So this edge we will get. This edge is actually the second will be denoted by the second part of this rotation map. So we will see that. So each vertex we will replace by this triangle. So you can see there are 4 triangles because in the earlier graph there were 4 vertices. And now here you can see I have labeled these copies by the vertices of the first graph. So I can call it as a I don't know, Professor Nimborkar must have used the word cloud. So the U cloud, V cloud, Z cloud, and W cloud. I'm going to use a sheet. So it is a U sheet, V sheet, Z sheet, and W sheet. So you can see U1, and you see the blue edge.
I think, Asif, you just say U sheet, SHEET.
Yeah.
It was not very clear. Just call the U sheet, V sheet, W sheet, and sheet, SHEET.
Okay.
I mean, it was not very clear what you were saying.
Okay, sorry. So U sheet or U cloud means I'm talking about this triangle. I'm talking about this triangle. And you see it has a vertices which is 1, 2, 3. So U comma 1. This is my vertex of the replacement product graph, and where the edge is going. So that's why here. So I'm talking about now this end, this and this. So this green is nothing but this edge. Suppose near this edge near U comma 1 has color T, and then where will be? So here color doesn't matter when you are in the second half of the rotation map definition. See, the I doesn't matter. Only thing is I is D2 plus 1. So D2 is regularity of the second graph. So here regularity is 2. So whenever you are interested in the third edge, which you are extra connecting, you don't have to worry about your color. So X and Y play a role. When they will play a role? When you are in the first half of the definition. It means when you are replacing the graph. So I already have my sheet. I already have my sheet. So I have already replaced. So I have replaced the vertices of the first graph by the second graph. So I have here there are 4 vertices. So I have 4 copies of G2 graph, which I'm calling a sheet or cloud. So I have U cloud, V cloud, Z cloud, and W cloud, or U sheet, V sheet, W sheet, and Z sheet. And then U and V. So U1 is U1 wrote G1 U1 is V3. I'm using that, and here I'm going to U1 and I'm going to V3, and that's how the color edge is connected, which just now I highlighted using green color. That's what. So this blue colors, blue edges are actually edges coming from G1 graph, and the red edges which are here, whatever red edges, those are triangles actually, they are coming from the first graph. So replacement is what we are doing. If you see, we are just replacing the vertices by the second graph. To have a better understanding, you can look at this. So I have a cube and I have a triangle, and now I'm replacing.
Blue
so
edges are exactly the same number of edges
yes.
from graph.
Yes, same number.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So here you can see it's a kind of what we are doing is we are truncating each corner of the cube, because there are at every corner point or every vertex of the cube, there are 3 faces which are coming together. So So I'm cutting it. It's kind of cutting it. So truncation is, you can write down in terms of replacement whenever you're truncating it. And when we look at this, at least Bhate sir might imagine what happened with when our buckyball or C60 or a football is actually a truncated icosahedron. Let me go and show you the diagram. So the first diagram is it's a icosahedron, and at every corner there are 5 triangles coming together. So if you truncate it, so in other words, in terms of a replacement product, if you replace each vertex of the icosahedron by a pentagon, then you will get the last diagram. And the in between two diagrams are it's a notion. They are trying to try to explain the notion of truncation means what. And this truncation, what I'm trying to tell you, is actually a replacement. So you're replacing that corner, that vertex, by a second graph, which here is a pentagon. And then whatever the resultant graph you got, that is a replacement product of truncated with pentagon. And that diagram which is there is actually a football, or in terms of chemistry, it is a C60 chemical molecule or a buckyball.
So degree is getting reduced here when.
No. Degree is getting one
degree
more
meaning
means,
degree of each vertex. So when you replace each thing by pentagon, here it becomes degree 3, right? The new graph.
Yeah.
The original icosahedron had degree 5.
What you're doing now you are comparing it with degree of the first graph.
Yes.
In definition, what we are saying is you compare it with degree of the second graph. So in the second graph, it was degree 2, and in the resultant now you see
it's plus 1.
2 plus 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So here also you can select that. So in the definition, if you see, we are saying that degree of the resultant is 1 more the degree of the second graph, and we are not talking about degree of the first graph. Degree of the first graph, what we want is it should be same as the number of vertices in the second graph.
So just a moment, this pyramid
Yes,
also
sir.
you can talk of as truncation of the, I mean, you just go up a bit. So you have that, this is your diamond, and you're cutting off the top of the diamond and putting a triangle. So it's the same thing again here.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same
so you
thing.
have not drawn it in that way.
Yeah, I haven't drawn it. That's why. I haven't drawn it in that way. So this replacement is actually a truncation. Yeah, which here we can easily see, or the buckyball or C60 we can easily see. So now this idea, what we did in my PhD is we took this idea and we applied this idea to Schreier graphs. And we applied, in the first instance, we applied it to Basilica, Schreier graphs of Basilica group, where automaton, this is the automaton, 3-state automaton, where 2 states are the generator of the Basilica group. They are non-trivial state, and one is the trivial state, or in terms of our group theory, that is the identity state. So that is the identity automorphism of the binary rooted tree, and A and B are the non-trivial automorphisms, or action of A and B
of the same tree, that you consider
of the same tree. All 3 are automorphisms of regular rooted tree, binary rooted tree, and this A and B are the generator. They are generating the group. That group is called as Basilica group. And the reason they call it as Basilica group, because the Schreier graph associated to this, the limit space of the Schreier graph at infinity, it looks like a fractal called Basilica. I can show you that. So this is that fractal. So at infinity, when n tend to infinity, when you are going at that infinite level, you will get the action graph will look like this. And this diagram is a Julia set of this polynomial C square minus 1. And therefore,
you mean the Schreier graph of Basilica
group?
Yeah,
Schreier graph. Yeah, you can consider this diagram as the limit space of Schreier graph of Basilica group.
But then you need a subgroup, so you have the full automorphism group, and the Basilica group is all subgroup, right? Is that your model?
Yeah. But now I am not talking about odd T. I am talking about its subgroup, and that subgroup is Basilica group.
Ah,
You got my
okay.
point?
Okay.
Yeah.
So subgroup is the Basilica group.
The subgroup is the Basilica group.
And
All
with
the
respect
Segregor
to that, you are
subgroup-
looking at the Schreier
No,
graph.
yeah.
Okay.
So here, when I'm saying Schreier graph means action of Basilica group on different level. At every level, I will get the vertex stabilizer group, stabilizer group. And if I take that group and if I quotient with my original Basilica group, then I will get a quotient graph. I will get a quotient. And on that quotient, if I take the action of that quotient itself, then the graph is actually a Schreier graph. Are you following me? Which yesterday I was talking about.
No.
Okay. I'll go to my slides. So this A and B will give you a non-trivial action on your on the levels of tree. That action is a transitive action. Okay. So at every level, if you take action of A and B, and since that action is a level transitive action, so you will get a connected graph. So at first level, you will get this graph gamma 1. At second level, you will get this graph gamma 2. At third level, you will get gamma 3. Fourth level, you will get gamma 4. All are connected graphs. This is okay? Are you following me now?
Yes.
Action of A, B on the levels of binary rooted tree.
So you connect two vertices when so by transitivity, right?
Yeah, by transitivity. So you are acting. So here, when I'm saying when there is a loop at 0, which is labeled by A and A inverse, it means you apply A at 0. So here, if you look at the diagram, there is a arrow which has a input symbol associated to that edge. So that edge is particularly ending in B. Can you see that edge? One outgoing edge which starts at A and ending at B, which has input symbol 0 and output symbol is also 0. It means A action of automorphism A at 0 is 0. And therefore, I'm getting a loop here in the star graph here in gamma 1. I'll try to write down again.
Yeah, it's clear.
It's clear, right? So I'm saying about this and this. This, whatever I just now highlighted, will give me A at 0 is equal to 0. So this is my input and this is my output. And that's why when I'm in first level, in the regular rooted tree, you have empty set, you have 0, you have 1, then 0, 0, and something. So I'm in this level. So action of A on the first level, action of A at 0 will give me 0. So these are my first level vertices. And here I got a A. Then if I take on 1 action of A at 1, it means I'm following this edge. So 1 is again output is 1. So I'm getting a loop at 1. So A action is over now. So let us go to B action. So B is telling me if I input symbol is 1, your output is 1. It means action of B.
You are not audible.
Hello.
Asif, you are not audible.
Hello.
Asif, can you hear us?
Some connectivity issue.
Yeah, maybe. He seems to have lost. I just called him up. He will rejoin, I think. There's some connectivity issue.
Is there any problem with the presentation?
No, he
Asif.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, now you are audible.
Okay.
You can share
Sir,
your
can you allow
presentation.
me? Can you allow me to share the screen?
Yes. Wait a second. Wait a
Yes.
second. Yes. Now you are co-host.
Yes. Sir. Okay. So now a similar way we can take action on second level, third level, and so on. So we will get a sequence of graphs, and this sequence, what I was trying to explain you is, will converge to some fractal, and that fractal was this fractal, which I was trying to show you, this fractal. And if you technically are following the definition of Schreier graph, then you want a sequence of subgroups also. Those subgroups are nothing but action stabilizer of Basilica group when you are looking at actions on different levels. So if you look at action of Basilica group on level 1, then you have two vertices. Take a stabilizer of both vertices and take their intersection. That is my group. That is my subgroup. And it's a result by Nekrasovich that this is if your stabilizer group has is a finite index subgroup, and that index is nothing but the number of vertices in that level. And because of that theorem, your action graphs and Schreier graphs are isomorphic.
Can I just make one comment? I mean,
Yes, sir.
Gamma 2 also consists of two copies of Gamma 1 with
Yes.
some connections. Gamma 3
Yes.
consists of two copies of Gamma 2 with some connections. Okay.
That,
So
yeah,
this thing
that's
you were
where,
talking about earlier this is exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm going on.
that's where we are heading now.
Okay.
Yeah. So just okay. So yesterday I defined a class of groups which we call as a group generated by bounded automata. And I shown a diagram of portrait, and then how every level you have a bounded number of the sequence. So there is a sequence, and that sequence is bounded, and therefore we call it as a bounded group. That is one interpretation. Other interpretation is interesting. Other interpretation is just look at this diagram of automata, and then find out how many cycles you have where where identity is not part of it. So cycles which is associated with non-trivial states or non-identity states. So here, if you start from A and come to B, then again from B you go to A. That is only one cycle you have. Only thing is you can start from A or you can start from B. So you have only these two, or you have only one this one type of cycle. So group is bounded. Means the automaton is bounded if and only if number of this kind of cycles are finite. So here, if you what I'm saying is you just look at the cycles where your trivial state is not part of it. Look at that cycle and find out how many such cycles exist in your automata, which generate the group. So in a Basilica automata, if you see there is only one cycle, and if you want to actually read the words along that cycle, then you have to fix from where you are starting. So if you are starting with A, just look at what are the symbols around that cycle. So symbol could be, if you follow input symbol, it will be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So it's a string of zeros. And the corresponding output string will be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Now, if you're starting from B, your input symbol, sequence of input symbol will again a 0, 0, 0, but the simple sequence of output symbol will be now 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. And therefore, what I have written here, since it is a bounded automaton, so there exists, so we can have corresponding sequences, and these sequences are called as, if you are writing from left, we call it as a post-critical sequence, or just you can say critical sequences. So these critical sequences, in other words, are finite. So if you have a bounded automata, then corresponding set of critical sequences or post-critical sequences is finite, and converse also holds. So it's an equivalent statement. So we are using this fact, and with the help of this fact and what Professor Bhate was trying to say now, look at gamma 2 and try to find out, can you see the gamma 1? And you can actually see there are 2 copies of gamma 1. Inside gamma 2, you can see copies of gamma 1 also, if you want to see, or you can see copies of gamma 2 also. So if you wish to see copies of gamma 2 copies of gamma 2, you will find that there are actually 2 copies of gamma 2. So if you want inside gamma n, how many copies of gamma n minus 1 are, then there will be always 2 copies. So that's where we thought that kind of replacement is happening, and then we tried to write down. So this was the motivating example. Here also in gamma 4, you can find out there are 4 copies of gamma 2. If you want to find out gamma 3, then there are 2 copies of gamma 3. If you wish to find out gamma 1, then there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of gamma 1. Yeah. So how to actually understand where the copies are, how to see that, and how to write it down explicitly. So I will now introduce the notion which we call as a generalized replacement product. But I will give the definition for Basilica-Schreier graphs and not for in general Schreier graphs of automata groups. Later on, we will extend it. So in order to go that, I need this, what I was talking about. So this boundedness of automata, I'm going to use it. So what is that? What I told you is there is a non-trivial cycle. Non-trivial cycle, I mean trivial state is not involved. So here that orange line and the blue line, if you just see your trivial state and that cycle, they are independent. So you just look at that. So you have a action on the word 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and you have a B action on the same word 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And that's why I drawn some 2 arrows there. One is A and other is B. Here when I wrote down the sequences and I gave them color. So let us not follow that color now. Everything is mixed up now. But I'm going to make use of that. So when in generalized replacement product, in replacement product, what we did is we took a second graph, and in the first graph, whatever vertices you have, you just replaced each vertex by the copy of the second graph. Here, what we are doing is the idea is same actually. I wish to replace each vertex of the first graph by a copy of the second graph, but I'm not taking a graph as it is. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm taking a particular subgraph of the second graph, and I'm calling that subgraph as a tile graph. And the vertex set of my subgraph and the vertex set of the original graph are same. So number of vertices are same. Only difference is in age set. And what are those two? What are those ages? Those ages which are coming from this non-trivial cycle. So action of A at 0, 0, 0 and action of B at 0, 0, 0. Only these 2 ages. That is the idea. So one edge I'm going to call it as EA edge, and one edge I'm going to call as EB edge. So you go to your string of zeros in your graph and find out the A edge and B edge and delete that, remove those two edges. And whatever left, that is your tile graph. That is the idea. So here, if you wish to know that, I'll try to draw the tile graph of gamma 1. So tile graph of gamma 1, I'm going to denote by gamma 1 prime. And it will be one vertex is 0, other vertex is 1. I want edges at 0, 0, 0. Why 0, 0, 0? Because of that cycle. So this B inverse edge, which is B inverse color here, and here it is B, here A, because I'm not interested in 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 string. So this will be the tile graph. Only thing is at 0, 0, 0 string, I'm removing the A action and B action. So A edge and B edge I'm removing at 0, 0, 0, 0 vertex. In gamma 1, that 0, 0, 0 sequence is it's one length word associated to one length word. Associated one length word is only 0. If you want to write down the gamma 2 prime, that second level tile graph, I'll draw it. Again, I will be having same vertices. So I will go follow the same sequence. So 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. And now add 0, 0, 0. I don't want my A edge and B edge. So A inverse edge and B inverse edge. So this is A inverse and this is B inverse. What I did is I removed A edge and B edge. So this will be my second level graph. And this gamma 2 prime, now you can see. So here in the second level, you can see this. And that's the idea. So you can identify two copies. And then here we have removed two edges. So two copies altogether, there are 4 edges. So where are those 4 edges? And those 4 edges are coming from here. This graph has 4 edges. So the edge adjacency is actually same as what we have seen in replacement product. But since when we are taking a copy, we are actually not taking a second graph as it is. We are removing some edges and then we are taking. And that is the reason our regularity is not increasing. When I'm here, my regularity is not changing. And in my case, in this case, regularity of the first graph and regularity of the second graph is same. And I don't want that number of vertices in the first graph and number of degree of the first graph and number of vertices in the second graph to be same. I don't want that condition. And because of these two reasons, we are calling it as a kind of generalization of the replacement product. So I'll write down the
Asif
yes,
sir,
yes, yes,
may I ask?
yes. You
Can you scroll down?
Down means here.
Yeah. This copy I can see, but there are some extra edges also.
Yeah, which edges?
Here, gamma 2 dash, you have shown these 2 circles. I can see these 2 copies, but some extra edges are also there. Is it?
Yes. Those edges, that's what I'm saying. Those edges are actually gamma 1 edges. So you try to see gamma 3 as gamma 1 generalized replacement with gamma 2.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I'll highlight those 2, which extra edges you are seeing now. I'll try to highlight it. So this 0, 0. So this A edge you are seeing. Then you are seeing this B edge. Then you go to here 0, 0, 0. This B edge.
Yes.
And this A edge.
Yes, right.
Right. And now you go to gamma 1 copy, gamma 1 graph. And see now, you have a loop at 0. So if I call, I'm sorry, now I'm making mess. My pictures won't look good now. But what I'm saying is the following. See yellow color now. If you take this particular sheet or this particular cloud or this particular copy. This is 0th copy. So what I'm doing is at every vertex of gamma 2 or here, all these vertices, I'm attaching 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So you can see every vertex here in gamma 3, I'm saying. I don't know now you are able to see the vertices or not.
Yes, sir.
And in the second copy, the other copy, the other copy, the green color.
Down one. Yeah.
This copy. You can see every vertex has end 1. So that is a 1 copy. One copy, I mean, associated to this one.
Okay.
And 0 copy, I mean, associated to 0 of gamma 1. Okay. And now here you see inside gamma 1, there are 4 edges. And here you are saying there are exactly 4 edges extra, which you are saying there are extra edges. Are you following me now?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Okay.
in addition to this, if you see there is a loop at 0 in gamma 1, which is starting at 0 and ending also at 0. And therefore the extra edges which are saying there is again a partition. And that partition is, there are 2 edges among those 4 extra edges. One edge is starting and ending within the sheet or within the cloud. And here between 0 and 1, there are 2 edges. So here you will see between 2 copies, there are 2 edges. Are you following me?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what now. So
Thank you.
what I'm trying to say you is we will take a copies of tile graph, and now we will use the adjacency which was there in the first graph, and accordingly we will connect them. And the resultant will again we will get a next level Schreier graph or some level Schreier graph based on what is your gamma, what is your first graph and second graph. So thank you for your question. It gave me opportunity to explain it better. So what I'm trying to say now is there are 3 types of edges. One edge are sheet edges, your tile edges, which are coming as it is. Just you are adding the last symbol to your vertex. So all those edges. So here in my diagram, all the original blue color edges, which is yellow and green sheet, all the blue colored edges. These are one type of, so I need 3 types of rotation map to be defined when I'm introducing when I want to write down explicitly what is my product or what are my edges in terms of rotation map. So one rotation map I will need for these sheet edges. I'm calling it as sheet edges, which are actually my tile edges. And then I also need one rotation map when the extra edges you were talking about, when they are within the sheet. And the third edges, which are actually my non-trivial edges, these edges I will need, they are going across the sheets. So here, if you look at in the graph gamma 1, my among those 4 edges, 2 edges, these 2 loops, their lifts here are edges which are within the sheet, and the lifts of B edges are going across the sheet. And I said non-trivial because here B action is non-trivial and A action is trivial. And that's why within the sheet I'm getting. So if you try to understand the permutation, and if you see it, so permutation corresponds to A is trivial, and permutation corresponds to B is 1 is going to 2 and 2 is going to 1. So it's a transposition 1, 2. And these are the permutations. If you see, look at this diagram, what is the permutation associated to 0, which I was calling a root permutation. So you can see around root permutation associated to A is trivial. It's just the identity permutation. And root permutation associated to B is the transposition 1 to 2, 2 to 1, or 0 to 1, 1 to 0. So what I mean is, we saw from the automata theory, we saw the thing called root permutation, and from the Galois theory, we saw the Frobenius means a permutation associated to Frobenius automorphism, which is a generator of a Galois group. And these 2 things are one and the same. That's what.
Can you repeat? Can you repeat the you just said?
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is root permutations which are coming from the Rithe recursion or from this diagram. So there are root permutation associated to each generator. And in the Galois theory, what are the generators of the Galois group? We call them as a Frobenius automorphism. The Frobenius automorphism from Galois theory. Of course, I'm talking about a graph theoretic version. And the root permutations here, they are actually exactly same. The action is exactly same. And when it is same, actually, then we can say that the next level is the Galois covering of the earlier level. So here, if I see like this, then gamma 3 is actually a Galois covering of gamma 2. And it is two-sheeted Galois covering. I need two sheets. That's where we are heading now. So thank you. He gave me opportunity to explain that.
Next level action graph is a replacement product, right? Of
yes.
previous
Yes.
Okay.
So it is a next level. So replacement. So here I took this. That's how I'm going to show my result. But this gamma 1 generalized replacement. I'm denoting by circle G. This gamma 2. This is isomorphic to gamma 3. And in fact, it is commutative. This is isomorphic to gamma 2 generalized replacement gamma 1. And that's why we said it is a generalization of a replacement product. In replacement product, you cannot it's not a kind of commutativeness is not there. Here we can have that. Can I go to next slide?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So whatever now we discussed, we are just trying to write down in terms of a rotation map. So we have a 2 regular graph, both are 4 regular graph, and the resultant which we are getting, that is again a 4 regular graph. What we will do is we will only look at the vertex 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and the action along that vertex A and B. So the one, I'm calling this 3 rotation map as 1A, 1B, and 1C. I'm just numbering, indexing them. So one can see that this 1A and 1B equations are actually lifts of the edge EA, means A action and B action. They are lifts. So I'm calling them as lifts. So these adjacencies will give me, so those edges which are described by rotation 1A will give, is actually lifts of EA edges in the first graph. And 1B will give me lifts of EB edges in the first graph. And the 1S is actually sheet edges. That's why I use the symbol S. Yeah, so sheet edges and lifts of A and lifts of B. Now here, if you see carefully, I gave for associated to every, means I'm talking about right hand side of 1A and 1B. There are 2 possibilities, depends on R. So it depends on U0, means length of U0, which I'm calling as a gamma R. So vertex of a Rth level. If it is even or odd, it depends on that. What I mean is this. Or if you go here, if you are in gamma 1, you are ending in, so in other words, in terms of the restriction where I started, so A restriction at 0 is actually B, but A restriction at 0, 0 is not B, it is again A. So if it is odd, then you have to act on the remaining part, means AW, A0W. Your action will be, this is 0 BW. But if you have A00W, then A00, this A00 is actually A only, not like B. So it depends on your string of 000, what is the length of that. And that's how the rotation map are explicitly written. And now what I was trying there is written here. So what I did is I took a 2 copies of gamma 3, and then I'm considering gamma 4 as gamma 1 generalized replacement, gamma 3. And I also did other way around. So gamma 3 generalized gamma replacement 1, and you can see the same thing. There are 8 copies now, 8 copies of gamma 1. because in gamma 3 there are 8 vertices. Or when you are taking gamma 1 generalized gamma 3, then there are 2 vertices in gamma 1. That's why you need 2 copies of gamma 3. Gamma 3 means tile graph of gamma 3. So are you convinced? I mean, are my efforts enough
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind
Yes,
of
yes,
a
of course.
replacement thing is happening?
Yes.
Yeah. So we later realized that means people working in this area, they use this, but means the kind of what we said. So Grigorchuk had given some kind of results like this, but that is only for Schreier graphs of Grigorchuk group, and he introduced some rules how from n level how to get the n+1 level Schreier graph of Grigorchuk group, and he called his rules as a substitution rules. And then Nekrashevich, with a student of Grigorchuk, he kind of developed that idea of Grigorchuk, and they call it as an inflation of graph. So, and that inflation of graph definition they gave for bounded Schreier graphs of bounded automata. But there you have means from n level how to get the next level. That's how their idea was. And if you want, say you have a 5th level and you don't want 6th level, you directly want 15th level, then you use this inflation idea of Nekrashevich. So first get a 6, then go 7, then get 7. So you do iteratively you apply, and then you get your whatever level you want. That's how their argument was. But somehow whatever we introduced is kind of more general idea. And yeah, so that was part of my some part of my first paper. Why we started with Basilica group is the reason why we were interested in this is this paper of Daniel, this particular paper which I guess came in 2015, which was published in Journal of Graph Theory. So in this paper they gave characterization when zigzag products are connected, at least in 4, means second graph is 4 regular graph. Now means I'm going to show you I'm going to define the zigzag product, but in zigzag product you need the whatever assumptions are there for replacement are same set of assumptions are there in a zigzag product also. So you want G1 have a say degree D1 regularity, then inside G2 you should have D1 vertices only, and suppose D2 is the regularity of the second graph, then what is the regularity of the resultant graph? In replacement it is D2 plus 1. In generalized replacement, which just now we discussed, is same actually. In zigzag actually it is D2 square. And therefore if your regularity is bigger, then it will go the resultant will have square of that regularity, and therefore it is very tedious job to play around with zigzag product. And therefore people only take a 2 regular graph, means second graph they try to keep as a cycle, so that maximum resultant will have regularity 4. And if you just add one edge, then regularity means, say for example your second graph is a 3 regular graph, then resultant graph will be 9 regular, and it will be too much to compute. So I want to go in that direction. So what I wanted to say is in this paper Daniel and his collaborators, they gave a characterization when your second graph is 2 regular graph, means a cycle. And what I'm trying to say you is there is a straightforward result based on the original zigzag construction, and that result is when you have G1 graph and you have G2 graph, then when G1 zigzag with G2 is connected. Let me tell you, whatever graphs we see in a graph theory book, if you take those graphs and if you try to compute zigzag products, you will find 99.99% times that graphs are disconnected. They are not connected graphs. And if they're disconnected, then there is no, it doesn't make any sense to play around that. So you need a concrete graphs where zigzag product will be connected. And this paper, through this paper, Daniel and his colleague, they gave a class of graphs and where zigzag product is always connected. And that class of graph is nothing but a Schreier graphs of Basilica group. And that's why we were interested in Schreier graph of Basilica group. So here zigzag products are connected. So our motivation was whatever we could see here on different levels of Schreier graphs of Basilica group. Now what is happening with zigzag products? So this was our kind of one can say result, what we have observed through that generalized replacement product as a tool. So you have gamma n and gamma r2 Schreier graph, and you do their generalized replacement product. Anyway, you can take gamma n as a first component or gamma r as a first component. The resultant graph is n plus r level Schreier graph. So this result is kind of generalization of inflation given by Nekrasovich. But of course, Nekrasovich gave it for Schreier graphs of any group generated by bounded automata, and ours was only for a Basilica group. Then one can easily make out, means people were already aware about this, at least Grigorchuk, Nekrasovich and their students, that the next level means gamma n plus 1 is kind of covering of gamma n. They were aware about that, but they were not aware that means whatever characterization we could do means as a Galois theory of graphs, that there is a covering called unramified covering, then there is a covering called de-sheeted unramified covering, and then again a normal covering or non-normal covering. So if your n is bigger, means if you are not in immediate level, if you are in further level, then it is not Galois covering, or we call it as non-normal covering. But if you are in the immediate level, then it is always a Galois covering, at least in Basilica setting. This is what we first observed.
Excuse me.
Yes.
This proposition 1 is for Basilica group, right?
For Basilica group, yes. We are in Basilica group.
But now,
here in the title I wrote whatever we are seeing now for Basilica.
You said it's also, you also said that it is true for other groups, right?
Yes. Later on, we realized that it is true. That's why our collaboration with Daniel happened.
Okay.
So, so see, we started, our first initial motivation was trying to answer the question raised by Terras and Stark. And their question was how zeta functions are behaving with different graph products and mainly with zigzag products. So we were interested in zigzag product, but later on we realized that zigzag products are not always connected. Then I started changing graphs. I got one conjecture which Professor Bhate in his talk was talking. I will come to that conjecture after my zigzag product definition. But then while doing this, I came across with Daniel's paper, and then we got a class which we were looking for. So we first proved this proposition, and then we got similar result when we do zigzag products. So proposition 2 is kind of zigzag version of proposition 1. Yeah. So when you have Galois covering, then you can immediately calculate the zeta function of the covering graph. And that zeta function is actually a product of RT-Nel functions. And RT-Nel function is associated to irreducible representations of the Galois group. So this is the standard theory. I will not spend my time on that. I will go to zigzag product. I saw Professor Nimborkar's note. She has explained. But I'll just introduce what is zigzag product. So you have again two graphs, and you have that condition that second graph has number of vertices in the second graph should be same as regularity of the first graph. If you have this, then you can always construct a zigzag product of those two graphs, and the resultant graph will have square of regularity of the second graph. This much regularity you will get of your resultant graph. This will be your regularity of the resultant graph. And then there are 3 steps how you go, and I saw she has explained that step. So how people call it a zigzag step. So something like when you are in the first rotation map, people call it as something like this, because you are in G2 graph, then you are going like this across, means you are going in G1, and then again you are going in G2 graph. So that's how people connected it as, means Wigderson call it as a zigzag product. And as I already said, what Daniel did is Daniel took a Basilica, Schreier graphs of Basilica group, and Daniel did the zigzag product with 4 cycle, because the graph is a 4 regular graph. And then he find that all level you do this and your graph is connected. Yeah. and this was important result for us. So this gave, this provided a good, nice example, which I was looking for during my initial days of my PhD. What I wanted to add here is, before I go to next slide, if you have G1 and if you have zigzag product with G2, if you have this resultant, so there is a theorem which says the neighborhood graph of G2. Now neighborhood graph means you take every vertex of G2 and find out its neighbor, and that will be a neighborhood of that vertex. So you have that many, the number of vertices in G2, that many you have neighborhoods, it means different sets. And then in two sets, if there is a non-empty intersection, you will so take that many vertices. So whatever you, different neighborhood sets you have, take that many vertices, and you connect to two neighborhoods when you have non-empty intersection between them. And then you draw a neighborhood graph. If the neighborhood graph of G2 is connected, then zigzag product is connected. If neighborhood, so we don't know about converse. If neighborhood graph of G2 is disconnected, most of the time zigzag product is disconnected. Now, if you apply this to C4, what Daniel did, so neighborhood graph of C4 is actually disconnected. So, and still the zigzag product with gamma n. So that is what something special is happening with Basilica, Schreier-Rupfer Basilica group. If you do the zigzag with Basilica group, still resultant is connected. That's why a result of Daniel is kind of important result in this direction. So double cycle, whatever the resultant, he's calling it as a double cycle graph, means I took this gamma 1 and my C4, and if I zigzag them, I'm getting this kind of double cycle graph. So if I, this second, which is like a hexagon, that is my gamma 2 zigzag with C4. And inside that, I can easily make out there are two copies of gamma 1 zigzag with C4. Of course, copy, I mean, I'm removing some set of edges. And those edges are again with respect to the critical sequences from the automata. And then we asked that, means then this was my motivation. Is this gamma 2 zigzag with C4 over gamma 1 zigzag C4 Galois? And yes, that if you are in immediate, then it is a Galois. So I said my proposition 2 is zigzag version of the proposition 1. So I got the same Galois group. So gamma 2 over gamma 1, or gamma n plus 1 over gamma n, whatever Galois group is there, gamma n plus 1 or zigzag C4 over gamma n zigzag C4. I'm getting the same Galois group. And say, since I said if I change my C4 with K4, as I said, for K4 it's a 3 regular graph. So the resultant graph gamma n plus 1 zigzag with K4 will be 9 regular graph, and it will be too much. Here it was 4 only, so somehow one can easily manage. Here it is 9 regular. So now K4, neighborhood graph of K4 is connected, and therefore this gamma n plus 1 zigzag K4 or gamma n zigzag K4 are connected graphs. Only one has to see, are they Galois? Is there a Galois covering? One has to check, and it's an open question. The spectrum which Professor Bhate was talking about is this one. So I was looking for graphs, and then I thought, let me play with complete graph. And if you take a complete graph, say on n vertices, and complete graph on n plus 1 vertices, and if you do their zigzag product, and then I started realizing that there is an interesting pattern in their spectrum. And since graph is regular, so this interesting pattern will reflect in zeta function also. And that's why he was telling that we could see there is an interesting pattern in zeta function. That was because there is an interesting pattern in their eigenvalue. So it's our conjecture. We think that these 5 numbers are the only eigenvalues. So yeah, for every n you will see these 5 numbers only as eigenvalue with multiplicity. So the power of the square bracket is my multiplicity of the eigenvalue, and the term or expression which is there in the inside square bracket is the eigenvalue. So this is, yeah. Now here both a complete graph is actually a expander graph or Ramanujan graph. Now what is happening here is what Professor Bhate was telling about. These expander graphs are sparse in nature. So if you look at the adjacency matrix, you will see many zeros and very few ones. Now in complete graph, completely different thing is happening because so much complete graph is connected, right? Means from any vertex you can go to any vertex, and therefore though complete graph is an expander graph, but that is not a good example for an expander graph. When we talk about expander graph from a computer science perspective, it should be connected, but it should be sparse also. And people are interested in constant or fixed regularity family of a expander graph. What I mean is, say for example, gamma and Schreier graphs of gamma n, they are not regular or expander, Ramanujan or expander, but in that family, you go to any level, your graph is 4 regular graphs. So any graph from that family or that sequence is actually 4 regular. So regularity is fixed. Here, you change your n and your regularity will change. So it is not constant regularity, and that is the only thing that later on I was not interested in working with this problem. That from a computer science perspective, these are not the good examples. Though from a mathematical science, there is an interesting pattern. So yeah, it will be good to prove that why this interesting pattern is there. Yeah, now I'm trying to go to the generalized replacement product. Now, generalized replacement product, as I said, generalized replacement product for Schreier graphs. I mean, now I'm looking at any group generated by bounded automaton, and as I said, then there is a finite set of post-critical or critical sequence. So whatever we did there in the Basilica group, just try to connect to that. So there was a sequence called 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and A action on that sequence and B action on that sequence. Here also we will do the same thing. You look at the post-critical sequences of your automaton, and that you will get that you could see when you think the non-trivial cycles of your automaton. That non-trivial cycle will give you your post-critical sequences, and since we are in bounded automaton, so number of such sequences are finite. So look at those sequences and apply, means travel that path which you saw, means your non-trivial cycle which I'm talking about in your automaton. Means there you will come to know that which generator are acting on that sequence. So there we call it as EA and EB, means action of A and B on the word 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So now I'm trying to generalize it. So I'm taking any post-critical sequence, and I'm from the automata, I'm trying to find out what are my generators, which are participating in that non-trivial cycle. So I will get the set of generators. In Basilica case, we got that set of generator as A and B. Not all generator every time will participate. So I will get some set of generators which are participating in that non-trivial cycle action. And then I will get those edges will actually, some of them will go across the sheet and some of them will go within the sheet. Depends on your first component of your replacement product. Yeah, so now I'm explicitly defining what is my tile graph and what is the edge set of tile graph. And I'm defining it with respect to the restriction. So here I did that restriction. When Kadu sir asked me the question. So here, this green part. So if you go along this orange edge, so A restricted to 0 is B. And then if you attach, so if you apply that restriction on 1, then you are ending in identity. And if you attach 0, then you are again traveling across the cycle. So that I'm talking about. So these things I took into consideration. And yeah, so tile graph, when your S restricted to U is ending in identity, and when you are again traveling across the cycle, those edges you remove from the Schreier graph, and whatever left is a tile graph. When we will see, I'll try to explain you whatever I'm saying with the help of example. So again, in the Basilica case, I gave adjacency in terms of 3 rotation maps. Here also it is given in terms of 3 rotation map. I think 4.13, because I don't have A, B, C, so I use now 4.11, 4.12, and 4.13. So 4.11 is actually sheet edges, and 4.11 and 12 are those generators. And again, it depends on means whoever is my generator. So I'm just giving you idea. So this is a kind of the generalization of the original definition we gave for Basilica. And so this is the generalized replacement in general setting. This result we again obtain, which we already obtained for Basilica. So this is kind of generalization of that result. And as I said, the generalized replacement and inflation, they are identical actually. If you are on the immediate level, or if you are in generalized replacement from gamma n and gamma r, you are getting gamma n plus r. And in inflation, you have to inductively apply that, and then you can get the n plus r level. That is the only difference. On the immediate level, both the products are identical, or both the processes are identical. So this was also one of our results. Now I will try to explain you through the diagram. So you just concentrate on this automaton and you try to find out how many non-trivial cycles are there. So if you see non-trivial cycles or non-trivial paths. So if you see a loop at B, you play as go, it is avoiding. So trivial state is not participating there. And therefore, that is your post-critical. But if you just do the 2, and if you also attach 0 to that 2 infinite sequence, still you are avoiding trivial state. So that will also be important for you. So we have these two post-critical sequences, 2 and 2 and 1 0. These are the two. So you take, if you are in gamma n, the restrictions of these two, 1 is 0 and 1 is 2. So the tile graph of gamma 1, I'm removing the B loops at 0 and 1. Here, this is the Schreier graph, and this is its tile graph. And you can see why the loops are removed. They are removed exactly at the one length restriction of my post-critical sequences. This. And this is the second, where there are 4 triangles. That is my second level Schreier graph of Gupta-Fabrykovsky or Fabrykovsky-Gupta group. And then I did this gamma 1. I think I made a mistake here. This is gamma 2 and this is gamma 1. I'm replacing each vertex of gamma 2 by tile graph of gamma 1. Yeah. So the dark blue triangles are edges of the first graph, and the faint blue triangles or faint blue edges are edges from the second graph. So they are sheet edges, and dark blue edges are those non-trivial edges. So those edges which are within the sheet, means loops, some loops, they will not contribute anything. But those when triangles are, they are connecting triangles, the dark triangles I'm saying, not dark loops means the within the sheet edges, and dark triangles are going across the sheet, and they will contribute in my they will contribute as a when I'm looking at a Frobenius map, which will generate the Galois group. And then the question is, so this is okay that we can so generalized replacement hold, we can extend it to for any Schreier graph of group generated by bounded automata, we could extend, and we could see that we are getting a next level Schreier graph. That is okay. But what happened with what are the immediate coverings Galois? That is the question, and that is what the one of the important theorem of my thesis. And recently, I'm trying to prove its converse also. So in my opinion, it's a if and only statement. So if my group generated by bounded automata has a level transitive action, then what I will do is, so I'm introducing one more notion, which I call as a reachable state. So by reachable state, what I mean is, if I go here in the automata, so this A state is a reachable state. So A is so I have a post-critical sequence, but I can, if I want to go to identity, I can directly go identity via that edge whose input level is 1. And there is another way to reach to identity from B. And whoever state you will come along while reaching B, those are your reachable state. So they may not contribute in post-critical vertices, but still they are important for us. So here my reachable states are both A and B are my reachable states. So I want such states, and then I will look at the permutation associated to them, which I call as a root permutation. And then I will look at the group generated by the root permutation. And if that group generated by root permutation, so the condition is if the group generated by root permutations of these reachable states has order mod x means size of my alphabet, which I started, I call it as B, then there is a Galois covering. And if you have a Galois covering, then Galois group has order D actually, because you are talking about the immediate Galois covering, immediate level, Galois covering in immediate level, and therefore Galois group will have order D. And therefore I was saying, Ganesh sir, you asked me the question, the Frobenius at one hand, Frobenius map at one hand, and the root permutation means the output map on the other hand, they are actually acting exactly same. Yeah. Now here, if you go and see the automaton, which is a tower of an automaton, here if you look at the actions at A, B, C, then the corresponding permutations are actually transpositions 1, 2, 0, 2, and 0, 1. And these are the, so A, B, and C are my reachable states. And if I look at the root permutations, they are 1, 2, 0, 2, 0, 1. So together they generate a group which has order 6, which is actually isomorphic to S3. And my size of my alphabet is 3 actually. And therefore, this is a group which is from the bounded automata class. But since this group doesn't satisfy that, so the corresponding levels, intermediate level, won't be, they won't be Galois covering. That covering is not normal covering. So I asked a question, whatever is the result I gave in the last slide, is that result hold for group generated by polynomial automata? So we have seen for bounded automata what happens with polynomial automata. So the polynomial automata means the number of post-critical sequences are countable, and bounded automata means the number of post-critical sequences are finite. So can we extend this to polynomial automata? That is the question which we asked. Yeah. Yeah, my time is over, but I'm at the almost last slide now. So I told that I will speak something about Aleshin and Belaterra automata. You can see the automata are exactly same, only the root permutations are a bit different. And there is a conjecture that Schreier graphs of these two automata are actually Ramanujan. They are strongly Ramanujan, so they are expander also. So this conjecture is still open. And just if I connect it to my result, so Belaterra automata, if you look at the root permutations, they satisfy that condition. Means root psi g, the group generated by them, has order 2. So the associated Schreier graph should have a Galois covering. But I have not included this in my thesis. Yeah. With this, I'm done. So questions?
This product you talked about, so gamma n replacement product, gamma m is gamma n plus m.
Yeah.
There is some grading right there.
Yeah.
Grading. So can one say gamma 1 is a generator, and can one put all these objects together? You know, just like
no, which gamma is
grading.
Gamma is a notation for my graph.
Yeah. But gamma n product gamma r is gamma n plus r. So n and r you combine, then you get n plus r.
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
is there any way to put all these together? Not sure. I mean,
No, together that I don't understand. What do you mean by together?
I mean, just like, you have a polynomial ring and you have a grading. So you multiply degree m polynomial and degree n polynomial, you get degree m plus n polynomial.
Achha, so you are talking about you take a star graphs of two different groups and then you want to think something together.
Yeah.
That's, I haven't tried, but that may be interesting.
And the other general question was, does this theory have any consequences to languages, linguistics?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, languages. You mean formal
formal languages,
languages, right?
Yeah.
Now, they are connected, but maybe you won't gain something non-trivial. What I mean is, if you see the vertices actually, so they form. So the vertex labeling, whatever is we are using, that is actually different vertices of different levels of regular rooted tree. So that X star, which is the vertex set of regular rooted tree, that itself a language, and that is a full language, because you are starting with some alphabet and you are taking all possible words over that alphabet, and that set you are calling as a X star, which is vertex set of your regular rooted tree. So you are not getting a non-trivial language; you are getting a full language, which is a trivial language in some sense.
Okay.
If you are getting some non-trivial, means some subset of the original set, then thing will be interesting, and that you will not get because you are in automata group and not in automatic groups, like a free group. So group elements, reduced group elements of free group is a regular language. So say for example, you are in free group of rank 2. So your generators are A, B. So you take a alphabet A, B, A inverse, B inverse. So with this 4-letter, you generate a language. And only thing is A and A inverse or B and B inverse should not come together. You generate a language. That language and full language on any four symbol full language. So this free group is actually a non-trivial subset of the original full language.
Okay.
Yeah, and for that reason only we call it as a automatic group, because elements form a language. Here element doesn't form a language. Here on the set of these words, we have a group action, and that group action is actually automorphism.
Okay.
But they don't form a group. What I mean is vertices of regular rooted tree don't form a group.
Is there any eigenvalue property for zigzag product or replacement product, just like tensor product? And how you conjectured that eigenvalues of that K, Mn replacement product?
Okay, so the first question, answer to first question. Wigderson and Vadhan and they themselves actually gave a estimation for eigenvalue of the zigzag product. Okay, so you will find the answer of your first question in their paper. So there is a estimation. If you know the eigenvalues of G1 and G2, then you can make out what could be your eigenvalues of G1 zigzag G2, that you can make out. That is estimation, not the exact formula, but they have given
for some classes at least.
No. For any G1 and G2, if you can construct the zigzag product, means if that condition is getting satisfied, that number of vertices in the second graph should be same as regularity of the first graph, then only you can go and construct the zigzag product. Then what will be the eigenvalues? What is less equal number and greater equal number? That number they have given in terms of eigenvalues of G1 and G2. So that estimation, Wigderson himself has given. That paper came in Annals of Mathematics. So you will find out that estimation so that estimation, from that estimation you will get your answer of the first question. And now the second question, how we did the conjecture, because whatever I'm saying conjecture, I'm giving you exact eigenvalues, I'm not giving you estimation. It is just one step ahead that whatever estimation they have done. And this I gave, as Professor Bhate said during his talk, I did almost means my N I did for around 50, 60, 70 also. I went up to that and I checked, and every time I realized that I'm getting the means whatever pattern I have discussed, so that pattern is getting satisfied. And this may answer partly to question of Professor Kadu when he asked Bhattacharya a question, which package. So what I did is I wrote a program in Mathematica and I checked. But then depends on what is your G1 and G2, you will have to write down a program. And then you give as an input, you give adjacency matrix of G1 and G2. And then you may get a adjacency matrix of G1 zigzag G2, and then you find out the eigenvalues. So for complete graph, it was easy. I don't know about RV.
What tool did you use? Which package? Sage.
Mathematica.
Okay.
Yeah. See, other packages know. I wanted to add this comment during you people were talking. Other people know means whatever at the back of the back end, there is no symbolic action. Mathematica will give you symbolic action. Means if your input is X, you will get answer in terms of X. In other software, you have to give numbers. Means you have to assign some value to your variable, and then you will get a result. So whatever that advantage we have in Mathematica, I tried to explore. So I checked what is I guess what should be my characteristic polynomial, and I passed my X variable, and I got the same characteristic polynomial which I was expecting. That's how I cross check again, and then we think that statement is valid or that statement is true, but we don't know proof.
Yes, any more questions?
Yeah, I'm
if
sorry,
there are no questions-
Joshi sir. I haven't speak anything about Fulbright Fellowship, so I'm sorry for that.
Okay, so we will arrange one more lecture. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of
Thank you.
HRDC and Department of Mathematics, I would like to thank Dr. Asif for these wonderful talks. Thank you, Asif. And maybe in next refresher, definitely we'll talk about Fulbright Fellowships.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With this,
Thank you,
conclude
Asif.
this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.